Let me talk to you guys about this. We briefly mentioned it a couple days ago. The dead internet theory.
Yeah.
Do you guys know about this?
Interesting theory.
Yeah, from the other day. I remember this.
The dead internet theory is that in 2016 and 17, that's when major corporations, government figures took over most social elements of the internet and replaced humans with bots. Or that the bots dramatically outweigh the production of content than humans do. So the internet is actually a zombie. You think you're interacting with other people just like you, but you're really just interacting with bots. And it's a decent theory. I mean, the idea is simple. Donald Trump was memed into the presidency. Regular people went online and said, here's what we want, and Trump wins. And they went, uh-oh, that's bad. Then you get a bunch of companies that start running sock puppet accounts and bot accounts, trying to make money or manipulate. And it's not a conspiracy. Even though they call it a conspiracy theory, it's like the natural tendency of what corporations would do to try and gain influence and sell products. But I got one more for you. This one's for you guys, Seamus and Seth. I think this is bot person theory. The actual conspiracy theory, in my opinion, is that 2016, 2017 is the point at which the internet crossed the threshold of being the most dominant media network for human beings. Newspapers, television, telephone were now underneath the internet. And with all people being online, we're now realizing that most people are as dumb as a box of rocks, effectively non-player characters. So to somebody who's used to having a real conversation, to being politically discerning or introspective, they're seeing a whole bunch of people post the same thing, repeat themselves, regurgitate. And this is how the theory started. The person basically said, I've seen the same post over and over again. I've seen the same comments repeated ad nauseum. And I'm just like, you want to believe they're robots, but it could just be that most people are just sheep and are just vomiting up the same thing they heard. And the reality is it's people. Mm-hmm. That's the creepy thing.
I think it's a better explanation. It's if I'm there and I'm real, and you're there and you're real, and you're there and you're real, we're all there, we're real. There's a lot of real people there. It's not all bots. There's obviously a lot of people involved in this thing. It's not all dead. And people do just parrot these lines over and over. And it's mindless, They just say whatever they're supposed to say, or what they've heard. They regurgitate what they've heard. And I see it all the time. And it seems like bot behavior, but it's really just people. We have become bots. We're basically just machines, just regurgitating stuff. Yeah. And you gotta be careful not to fall into that trap yourself when you're engaging with them. Well, then you just start saying what you're supposed to say in response to that, and you're engaging in your own,
That's why I post nonsense on Twitter. That's why I said, figuratively throw up high, do something weird. Yeah. I posted an AI Trump as a chicken. Yeah. I was, I thought this my whole life. I was just like, how come no one ever does anything unpredictable? It's not really true. That's never, but 80% of the time it's completely predictable. 20% of the time you're going to be surprised by what someone does. And I was just like, for the most part, everybody's walking around doing exactly what you'd expect them to do. Not a single person decides to do anything weird. That's why some people do.
They're all just thinking really weird things.
Yeah, that's when I started making internet videos. Like, what would Jesus Christ do with this modern technology? He'd make internet videos and try and spread the God. So I was like, I'll do it, and so I did it, and that was weird. And it's not me.
That's not weird. It's completely routine and boring.
Of course, everyone's doing it.
Right.
It's the natural order is to
live
like Jesus.
What I'm saying is, like, how come no one's buying porta potties and labeling them Shelley Moore Capito? You know what I mean? Like, you've got all these powerful, wealthy people who are complaining but doing nothing or doing very little.
I think the power of making an internet video is misunderstood. It's not quite the power you have. The resonation of your vibration through voice and light is so powerful.
Dude, if I made $50 million a year or something like that, I would just go to these companies and be like, how much will it cost to buy like 10 Times Square billboards and just put up the same thing, just doing something weird like ragging on Shelley Moore Capito?
Well, so I will answer with a Jordan Peterson quote, right? It's not many people are creative, and it's not obvious why you would want to be, because creative people are miserable when they're not doing creative things. And he sort of had this very insightful, interesting explanation there. But yeah, it's basically that. I mean, most people are not creative in the way that we usually define the term, and so they're not interested in doing those kinds of things. I think when somebody is more creative and they do have means, they're often afraid to do anything interesting with it.
Man, that's lame.
Just because...
sure, but I think it's the way things are.
Because they're afraid of being told that they suck.
Elon's buying Twitter.
Elon is
that's
a
cool.
very unique example, right? And we talked about this with Jeremy Boring, right? Just sort of comparing Elon to Bezos. And he described Bezos as what, like the most boring, interesting person, or most interesting, boring person. Something
It's like he builds a rocket, but it's like not cool.
Exactly. So I think you see a lot of that.
Do you think that people with means that are creative, they're afraid of being told that they suck?
Well, no. So I think that's part of it. I think that everyone has an excuse not to do the interesting thing they want to do. So when you don't have a lot of money, it's I could never do this because I couldn't afford to. Then when you do have money, well, I could never do this because I could never afford to damage my reputation or risk my wealth.
I guess people are scared of their reputations or something.
Yeah.
That's
the big
Your
thing.
brand, yeah, the
And
brand.
people always have been. I think we put more emphasis on it today, and I think we've been trained to. We've become very narcissistic, but it's huge for people.
Isn't there a point where you just have so much money? They say it's FU money, but it's not. It's not. I mean, let's be real. Can we name? I guess Elon Musk is buying Twitter, which is cool. It's not particularly outrageous. It did anger many people on the left, but it's actually a relatively it's a big bold move, but it's not throwing a pie. You know what I mean?
You don't think so?
No. Throwing a pie would be like buying a Super Bowl commercial or buying a billboard of Ian in Hollywood just saying, "I remember you," and just like culture jamming.
Well,
from my perspective, I never expected. I was trying to think to myself, well, what would be a possible solution to this issue of viewpoint discrimination happening on these platforms? Like that there's either going to be some kind of a law that's passed, possibly, Congress could get involved and draft legislation, or the courts could do something. I never in a million years thought, oh, well, maybe the richest man in the world is going to come along, describe himself as a free speech absolutist, and buy the platform and fix the problem. It was a curveball. It was unexpected. So if you go back to the point that you were making about no one ever does anything unexpected, like who expects that someone's going to come in and offer more than the company's worth just to make a point about how this needs to be free speech?
I would say it's on the line. A rich guy buying something expensive is like, okay, it is surprising that someone made a move like that. But it's not like if Elon came out and said he was going to put $100 million into making a rival news organization, that would be like, whoa. But I will say Elon definitely fits the bill. Definitely. Because he tweets things at like AOC, like "Stop making me blush," like absolutely amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
so he's definitely doing it.
Yeah, he trolls people very effectively.
Very nice.
I think it's also a definitional problem, right? Because if you're asking why aren't people usually doing things that are unpredictable, if they were, it would be predictable. I mean, by definition, for something to be unpredictable, it has to happen infrequently.
But I'm just saying, there are a lot of very wealthy people that are, and many of them are somewhat directly or tangentially involved in like culture war issues. And like, how come nobody just does bold, weird things? Save Elon, right? Because he tweeting at AOC was hilarious. Buying Twitter is massive. It's like, I've talked about this many times. There's very few people who just do the weird thing.
Well, Donald Trump did with the Apprentice. That was so weird.
But that was just a
and then he did the
TV
president
show.
thing. Yeah, but then he ran for president, and he always kind of
That was weird.
That one was weird.
We can acknowledge, like we've said this a number of times. If you told someone 10 years ago that Trump was going to be president and the deep state was going to try to unseat him, and everything that's happened, we would go, I don't believe that. Just some weird things.
Seriously, just let's pause for a second. Imagine it's 2012 and you're like sitting with your buddy and like you're in the living room and he's like, you're like, I've come back from the future 10 years. And he's like, wow, what happened? You're like, okay, well, Donald Trump ran for president against Hillary Clinton and won. And then a bunch of special interests accused him of secretly working with Russia. And even MSNBC had a guest on entertaining that he may have been a Soviet agent going back to the 80s. He ultimately won. Then Joe Biden gets elected. Donald Trump supporters think the election was stolen, so several hundred stormed the Capitol building during the electoral vote counting process. Texas files a lawsuit against Pennsylvania, and half the country and other half the country are now involved in whether or not the election was legitimate. They're going to be like, what? Mm-hmm. That's never
I'd be like, so
happen.
was Obama's birth certificate real or fake?
Yeah.
Did we get to the bottom of that?
Yeah, did we ever get to the bottom
Did we
of that?
ever figure that out? How does Lost end? No, I get that was probably after 2012. Before 2012.
Let me try and phrase what I mean. It's like, because obviously Elon Musk is doing funny things, but like, he's not doing funny things like buying 100 porta potties and putting the name of a senator on it and distributing them around fairgrounds. You know
I think you should just do it. You're fixated on that.
800 bucks.
You really want to do it.
You want to see in the world.
It's a really good example. Exactly. No, it's $800 per porta potty.
Oh, yeah.
So,
nice.
you know, we spend $80,000 on 100 porta potties and then just be like, they're free. You know, like, oh, what's that? You're doing call up construction companies and be like, well, just give it to you. Just use it. And they're called Shelly boxes.
I think another thing that happens, and this is really insidious and it's not accounted for often, but there's an entire set of behaviors that we are told are weird and quirky and interesting, but which are really boring and predictable. So a lot of folks feel like they're doing something unique or new when they're just sort of going along with the program. So there are a lot of examples of this. We see this with the activism a lot of these companies engage in, where they'll make their corporate logo a gay pride flag or something. And it's okay, well, that's the most predictable thing you can do, but you think it's edgy and brave and interesting. Or at least for a time they did. At this point, they're probably willing to acknowledge that this is just the thing you're expected to do.
And don't forget, July is MAGA month, so everyone's got to change their logos to American flags. And I'm doing it. I'm gonna get graphics made. You know, my Twitter profile will be my face with the American flag behind it.
I like that.
But
yeah.
I mean, how often? I'm sure we've all encountered this, where somebody gives you the most banal, predictable, advertiser-friendly perspective, as if it's something new and original. All the time. I mean, it's constant. It's like whenever someone's like, you know what, like, I don't like Christianity, or like, well, and it's like, okay, it's like, I understand that, but can you acknowledge that that's a very safe position? But people don't do that anymore. Like, their view has to be unique and interesting, even when it's plainly banal.
I wonder if it's just, you know, from my perspective, most people, they play music because they looked up to someone and want to emulate somebody else. Most people just want to emulate someone else. So they want to fit in, they want to stay in line. I wonder how many people genuinely don't care about fitting in, and I wonder if that's technically like a mental illness. No, I mean it, because humans are social beings. You want to fit in to survive, so it takes a very rare individual to be like, literally don't care if I fit in or not. Like, what would I do if, you know, we were like nomadic tribesmen, you know, thousands of years ago, and I was being arrogant, like, I don't want to do what you say, screw you. They'd be like, get out. And I'd be like, well, I'm going to go die, I guess, in the middle of the woods. So it's like, I talk about making these Shelly boxes, but would people really be like, would they be like, that's great? Or would they be like, you're really disrupting what we're trying to do here.
I made outhouse, put poster on it. They'd be like, leave now.
Rug.
They're like, this is
Rug
one of
on
the people
toilet.
leading our tribe. Leave now.
Or is the reality that the outliers and the weirdos end up being the leaders?
Sometimes they're snuffed out. You never hear about them.
I think what ends up happening is the sociopaths, like the narcissists and the egotists, end up becoming the leaders. People who are like, I should be in charge. And then once they're in charge, they're like, I can lie, cheat, and steal and do whatever I want because I'm better than you.
I think Ben Franklin was a nut job, but he was so organized that he was able to create a periodical, you know, the Poor Richard's Almanac, and distribute propaganda for 30 years to brainwash people into thinking that freedom was the way and that they should revolt against the king. So he worked out. Do what Ben Franklin did.
Fly a kite in a storm with a key on it.
Yeah. Absorb electricity.
It's time to do that too.
Get weird. They never
I'm
talk
starting to
about
buy
his
into
drug.
your he was crazy theory.
I like that. Yeah, it's a good point.
Ben Franklin. He's a polymath,
but-
they call them.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.